any fear I felt was kind of quickly replaced by like curiosity. I was looking at tasks and I was thinking, okay, well, AI can actually be my co-pilot here, here, and here. With regards to email marketing, I never used the straight output of AI. I thought about the things that were like the biggest obstacles for me, like, oh my God, I didn't know what angle I'm going to write for this email. But ultimately, I would temper it with my own taste as well. You want something interesting, special, educational. And so I would ask it to basically act like a potential customer and then ask loads of interesting questions. I would really have quite deep, involved discussions with people about, hey, listen, you need to build on your own fundamentals before you can lean on this thing, which is like a shortcut.
Welcome to the AI Marketing Show. I'm your host, 𝐬𝐫𝐞, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Najmah Salam, and we're going to talk about all things email marketing, copywriting, and stuff like that. So before we get started, thank you so much, Najmah, for being here.
Oh, it's pleasure. Yes, I'm absolutely chuffed to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start off by sharing a little bit about, what you've been up to and how you even got started with AI and email.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit of context. I'm Najmah Salam. You can call me Naj. Usually I think I'm in trouble if people call me by my full name, so just call me Naj. I call myself a marketing alchemist, but basically I'm a freelance marketing consultant. And the reason why I call myself a marketing alchemist is I help people use their existing elements and turn it into marketing gold. I'm a little bit geeky, which is why I like, using magic and sci-fi concepts and everything I work with. So yeah, I call myself a chronic marketer as well, because I've been in marketing and communications for like 15, 16 years now, which is crazy to think about. In my last full-time role, I was a head of marketing at a learning technologies company. And they had a brand new product category, which is very exciting, which is content intelligence. And it was AI assisted technology. So in terms of like AI, I was lucky because I got to play around with it even before ChatGPT was, even an option, and before it really hit the market. And so I was in the OpenAI playground playing around with prompts and things with my colleagues. And I've been it's been part of my tool set ever since. And in terms of email marketing, so I fell in love with email marketing about 8 years ago. I've never looked back. And so naturally these two worlds have combined. So yeah, I mean, AI being a tool like anything else, obviously I'm going to use it as part of my email marketing suite, or my suite of services I offer.
Wow. That's amazing. I've never heard anyone call themselves a marketing alchemist, but I absolutely love it.
Thank you. Yes, I should have had a laboratory in the background actually thinking about it. But no, I'm in my noir detective background, which, by the way, I made in Midjourney. Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. So you've pretty much been in marketing for a while. That's so fascinating that you were playing around already with OpenAI before it had this like big boom. Mm-hmm. What do you think is like one of the things that kind of, I guess when you first started using OpenAI, like what was one of the first like reactions that you had when you started utilizing this technology?
Oh my goodness. I think it was like probably when man first saw, or, humankind first saw like putting flint to wood, making fire. It felt a little bit like that when you could like put a sentence in, like ask it something, it would just generate stuff. It was like a magic trick. But obviously we're a little wiser now, right? We kind of know like the inner workings and stuff. But like when I was first playing around with it, I was really like, wow, this is incredible. Asking it to make like poems based off like really silly prompts, and for that, for it to just start typing it all out in front of your eyes. Yeah. Yeah, that was really fun.
That's really cool. Did you ever like, one of the biggest things that usually comes up is people being kind of like a little afraid that it might actually replace them? Did it ever give you a little bit of fear that you could be replaced by this tool?
I mean, I think, the fear I think is valid. And I certainly know people whose, if not being replaced, where like departments are maybe like replacing that kind of resource. So it's not invalid, that fear. I mean, for me personally, every time I feel fear, it's a good sign for me to just barrel into it like headwards, like very stubborn goats, and go straight in there. So any fear I felt was kind of quickly replaced by like curiosity. So I just started, getting into it. And in fact, at my old workplace, we just started having weekly sessions where we would have kind of like a show and tell or a discussion of like, what did you use AI for this week? So yeah, I think fear, replacing that fear with curiosity. Although I think there are lots of pretty important conversations to be had right now, especially in the creative world. But that's like a whole other podcast. Maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover with AI.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true. Like curiosity, I think is definitely the best way to lean into it when it comes to AI. I guess that kind of like makes me wonder, how did you, when you were, being curious about this and learning more and stuff like that, how did you start getting like better and better at using it for like email marketing specifically?
Okay, so I used it for like every aspect of marketing, but in email marketing in particular, um, I I I kind of sat down and took a good look at all of the processes I was doing in the day, and then I was trying to rank things by how much time each task took, and I realized things like and like how much time each task takes versus like the output of it or like the impact it makes, right? And so that would be really things like writing meta descriptions for blogs that I've written. That actually takes like a surprising amount of time, especially if you've like written this 2,000 word blog and your brain, like your headspace is not there. And that's something that you can easily do with AI. So like I was looking at tasks and I was thinking, okay, well, AI can actually be my co-pilot here and here. With regards to email marketing, I never use like the straight output of AI. AI is more there as like a kind of like a jumping off point for me in anything I use. So when it came to emails, I thought about the things that were like the biggest obstacles for me, like, oh my God, I didn't know what angle I'm going to write for this email that's going to be similarly like fun and informative and compelling. That can be hard. And that's where AI can maybe help with like brainstorming or mind mapping or helping you to rephrase some kind of like crappy first draft that you've written. So yeah, it's just a lot of like trying and like trying, testing, but ultimately I would temper it with my own taste as well. I think taste is a really important thing when it comes to using AI, because if you haven't developed your taste for what good writing looks like, what good design looks like, and what good marketing looks like, you're not actually going to get the full benefit of working with AI. So I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I think that, and that in itself is kind of like a workflow. It's like auditing, right? Auditing what you're doing, how it's actually impacting. So number one step that anyone should be doing. And then I love that you said that you use it as a co-pilot, because it truly is. It's like, when you're creating the content, 100%, you like, that is the best way to use it as a template to build off of.
Yeah.
The more that you kept going more and more into this, like, did you ever notice any of your peers that were kind of just copy and pasting or things like that you were like, I wish they weren't doing that. I wish I could tell them a better way.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly saw examples of that out in the wild. And then I've had discussions with like junior people in the business as well who haven't had as much experience with like copywriting and, other skills and things to do with marketing. And so, when you're not sure about a skill, you're more likely to lean on something that looks like it's good at copywriting, which AI is very good at fooling people. It is. So, I would really have quite deep, involved discussions with people about, hey, listen, you need to build on your own fundamentals before you can lean on this thing, which is like a shortcut. So yeah, definitely. I mean, seeing it out in the wild, I mean, I've seen a few like sus social media posts, let's say, or comments, and I just think, oh man.
Yeah. I heard you mention a couple of things that kind of, I think this is worth mentioning. It's the foundations, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Because kind of going back to like the start of this, it's like, are you actually afraid that it's going to replace you? And at the end of the day, it's like, you still need this knowledge, right? You already know copywriting, marketing, your voice, how things should be being like said. And I think that's really important. So when you kind of like think about it, what do you think that maybe, I don't know if you've come across any people like this, that other email marketers that might be reluctant to try AI? Is there anything that you would kind of encourage them or share with them a little bit of insights that can actually help them begin their AI journey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've come across people who flat out will not use AI for, I think perfectly like fair reasons. There's obviously like the ethics behind where the data is coming from and things like that, and that's absolutely fine. But for people who are maybe like want to try but are like feeling a bit reluctant about it, what I would say is that what are your boundaries for like what you think is a good, authentic use of AI? And then once you've kind of settled that within yourself, then just start like with baby steps. Because one of the things about AI, and one of the reasons why I think it's really penetrated the market so much, is that it's so easy to use and it's free, and it shows its benefits like pretty quickly. So, just baby steps, I think it would help people just kind of get across that line. It could even be things like one of the things I'm going to demo, which is like helping to write microcopy. Because I feel like every email marketer I know has struggled with writing microcopy at one point or another.
Well, if for anyone who hasn't heard of that term before, how would you define microcopy?
So microcopy could be things like writing calls to action, writing like minuscule bits of text or copy, which are surprisingly the hardest ones to write. Writing like, how do you write unsubscribe from us in a fun way? Right. If your brand is like, hey, it's like, very like casual and very fun, how are you supposed to write like legalese in that brand voice? It's really difficult. So I think microcopy is definitely one that people struggle with.
Yeah, that's true. I always love it when personality shows off in the small print.
Yeah.
Before we dive into a demo, going back to like email marketing, what do you think are some things that email marketers should look for? For example, I'll just give you a quick example. Whenever I've asked ChatGPT to like write let's say a cold email, right? And it'll create a cold email, and then it usually starts with like, hey name, I hope this email finds you well, blah, blah, blah. And it goes into the whole email. Well, in cold email marketing, when you start an email with, I hope this finds you well, you're already kind of like wasting space. Like that should be more of a bolder hook. So what are some components that when you see ChatGPT or any AI chatbot that people are using, when you see that they're generating this content, what are some things that you kind of look for to eliminate?
Yeah, what do I tweak? I mean, I always try and edit ruthlessly anyway, even like whether the copy is coming from like a person or AI, you should be editing ruthlessly, right? Especially in cold email marketing. Some of the things I would look out for is being following the rules like too much in terms of like grammar, because copywriting isn't really about fantastic grammar. Just look at Think Different by Apple. This is not grammatically correct, but it's impactful. It's more about the impact rather than like following all of the rules. And so I think some of the things you might want to look out for is like, okay, where can I break the rules here from this output? Also, I think it's worth changing or tweaking your prompts as well. I think it's always a good idea to include in the prompt an example of a good cold email. And then from there, you can, probably finesse it down further. So if you're not giving it, if you're not training within your prompts as to what a good cold email looks like, it's probably just going to assume, hello there. I hope this finds you well. It's going to be like overly like courteous, right? So, I think some training within the prompt makes sense, and then editing ruthlessly.
Yeah, I like that. It's about the impact that the copy can create. That's very impactful. What do you think are some like use cases, or what is like a best use case for email marketing?
AI in email marketing specifically. So I think, like I said, Microcopy is one of those ones where AI can really help. Because how many of us have seen autumn roll around and then we see that subject line, right? No tricks, just treats. That's a tired marketer having to write their like 500th email. And that's where AI can step in and be like, okay, come on, like prompt some ideas for really compelling, persuasive, fun subject lines, which could be an alternate to this one. Another really great use case is like the stuff that happens behind the scenes. So I've always worked in small teams, pretty small dynamic teams where everything's working quickly, and I've had to wear several hats. I don't know what to say. I like punishment for some reason. I like wearing all the hats. When you're in that kind of situation for pretty much your whole career, you start looking at automation and how to automate things. And this is where like AI can come into play, right? Like, you can use something like Notion AI, and it's auto prompt to like help fill out databases where you're keeping track of your content calendar or things like that. So I think a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that can be automated is like severely underrated use case for AI, actually.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes. What about for there's also on like scraping for contacts and stuff like that. Do you know of any, or do you even recommend that?
I honestly wouldn't. And just from my own personal experience where the team that I've worked with, we would try that, but it's just hasn't worked for us, because ultimately I think it was a combination of things, right? Our product is pretty niche, and there's like better ways to spark conversations than possibly annoying people with like 5 cold emails in a row. So in that respect, not necessarily, but in other respects, like creating really excellent content that draws people into your company story and the story of your products, and what their future state of using your product, which is going to be heavenly, utopia even, all of that stuff are things that AI can help with. So an example that I would give is that, okay, I had to write 2,000 word blogs, pretty much every week. And obviously I would, get AI to help. But the way that I would get AI to help is to ask it to behave like a customer, and then to ask me a bunch of questions. And that would generate like really interesting angles to writing the blogs. So I wouldn't just ask it to like write a blog, because that's very, homogenized content. It's like the best average of like what it can scrape off the internet, which is not what you want. You want something interesting, special, educational. And so I would ask it to basically act like a potential customer, and then ask loads of interesting questions. So actually that's another use case as well.
That is so smart. Yeah, act as my customer and like get them to ask a bunch of questions. That is so smart. I guess when you like, I guess this kind of goes a little bit more into like the technicalities of email, but do you prefer versus like text only versus like those really nice, pretty, like designed emails?
Well, I'm gonna be like a really annoying marketer here and say it depends. It's a bit of a meme at this point, but I am seeing more and more the case for simplicity in email design. Actually, some of the best performing emails that I sent have looked like a letter essentially. So it's not necessarily plain text. It looks plain text-ish. I used to call them plain text-ish. So it would be fairly simple, just plain text, and then like a nice headshot from like the CEO or whoever the email was from. And I think in the right situations, that can be so powerful because it feels more personalized. It feels more human. Whereas like, having the best design thing may not work in certain situations because it might look a little bit like too polished, and I think people have a good sense for what looks too polished.
Yeah, and I guess that's also kind of like what happened with ChatGPT. It just goes straight for like that super courteous voice.
Yes.
Like people can just kind of tell it was AI generated.
Yeah, I mean, so like, a really easy thing is like when I write emails, I say, "Hey, so and so," but ChatGPT would probably write something like "Dear, dearest, hello." It's like overly courteous. Like nobody actually writes an email like that. So yeah, it's funny actually. That's like people higher up the corporate ladder. I find like all sense of like grammar and stuff just goes out the window as well. So I've received like emails from CEOs where it's like all in like lowercase.
If we kind of go into a little bit of a live demo, if you don't mind,
Sure.
I think it would be awesome if you could share a little bit more. I think you were mentioning about microcopy.
Microcopy, yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to show this in both ChatGPT and Bard just to kind of like show how they both present. So let's start with our friend ChatGPT. So this feels so obvious and simple, but I think I've used this probably the most, this particular prompt, which is, I want you to act as a, sorry. Let me try that again. My keyboard is like not feeling it today. So let me break it down really quickly. So I want you to act as an expert copywriter. Generate 5 alternate calls to action to, you can put whatever like insert, whatever CTA you have. And so the one that we see most often would be something like shop now. So let's try it. I can't count probably how many times in my career that I've written shop now. So it's generated 5 like perfectly serviceable CTAs, and obviously I wouldn't use them as is, but they're already sparking really interesting ideas like unleash your style. Fantastic. That's a really fun one. Don't miss out is great, and like using my experience and my taste, like I was saying earlier, and I know, and my expertise is that don't miss out is a really good one for inspiring that sense of FOMO as well. Elevate your space. Again, that's great. That's a perfectly good alternate CTA to shop now. So as you can see, like I've probably used this pretty simple prompt the most in my email writing kind of like realm.
Wow, and basically anyone, to get it more unique to them, they would just put like what they do right up the top, right?
Absolutely. So you could iterate upon this by, I want you to act as an expert copywriter at a so and so company. At a fashion company. So generate 5 alternate calls to action to shop now. And it'll probably come up with like things that are more specific to that industry. So step into luxury, dress to impress, be runway ready. So again, that's already like much better than what I had earlier, which was fairly generic.
That's awesome. And this actually makes so much of a difference because you're adding, like you said, you're adding your personality, and it's still it's going to probably require like some light editing, but it's not going to be like a full overhaul.
Exactly. And you could change this up for things like in email, like manage your preferences. Yawn. You could like ask for alternates to manage your preferences, or like the very like unsexy stuff, just add a little bit more flair, just zhuzh it up a little bit. You can easily do it with this prompt. So yeah, it feels so simple, but I just think it's just so valuable for anyone to have in their arsenal.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like the little things, the little details that make such a big difference. I'm curious, like, have you ever A/B tested it?
I haven't A/B tested it, no. And I would just encourage people to, of course, but it's like every company is so different as well. I honestly say that the best benchmarks are the one that you set yourself as a company. So like do something consistently for 3 months and then A/B test, like do stuff like that first.
True. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because like a little bit of a side note. At one point I ran Facebook ads, and I would run like these headlines in comparison to each other on a Facebook ad, just to see which one outperformed. And it was really funny because usually the AI generated ones would outperform like whatever you think is a really good headline.
God damn it. Yeah. Foiled again by AI. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You just have to test. I mean, the funny twist to that as well is like I've A/B tested before, and I've written like a pretty bog standard, like basic thing, and I've written the thing that I thought had like a little bit of panache, and like it's the basic thing always wins out as well. Like that's the other side of it too, where like, yeah, you just kind of have to try it out, don't you? Maybe an iteration on this that I would tell people as well is that one thing I've used before is I've looked at the best performing subject lines over a period of time, and then I would use a prompt, something that says these are the 10 best performing subject lines, email subject lines. Can you generate subject lines based off these ones that are about so and so? And you can probably get some really interesting things off the back of that, because AI is really good at spotting patterns. So pre-training it on your own best performing subject lines is a really good way to make use of that.
Wow, yeah, that's true. And so this is mainly for like call to actions. What other places would you normally see microcopy?
I mean, microcopy could be anything like I said, like, unsubscribe here, manage your preference. Yeah, all of the like tiny stuff. It's really important, obviously, but maybe sometimes like it's a little bit boring, and so you want to give it a little bit of zhuzh. Then yeah, absolutely, microcopy can be. I would count like subject line as microcopy because you only have so much real estate, right? So again, subject line is the bane of like most email marketers' existence. Really good way to make use of AI, asking it to generate alternates to the very basic, simple subject line you might already have.
Oh, for sure. Have you tried Melmodo created a subject line generator? Have you tried that one?
No, I haven't. And actually, while we're on it, I said that I would try this prompt in Bard. So it'd be interesting to see how it performs differently in Bard as well. So I'm just going to put the same prompt in and generate 5 alternate calls to action to shop now. I think what's interesting about Bard is that I think it has a bias towards being more markety, if that makes sense, because of the nature of the platform, like it being on Google. Google obviously has a lot of like its own digital marketing stuff going on, like it's Google Digital Garage and stuff. So I think it has more of like a marketing bias, but maybe it's just me. But yeah, there you go. So 5 alternate calls to action to shop now. Treat yourself today. Get the look. Don't miss out. It even gives you like reasons why the CTA would work as well, which is really interesting in Bard, which is why I think it has more of a marketing bias. So yeah, really interesting stuff when you try both ChatGPT and Bard.
Yeah, Bard gives you so basically, do you mind going back to the Bard example? So basically,
sure.
Bard is giving you treat yourself today. That would be the call to action, and then this is just like kind of explanation.
Yeah.
Where you, yeah, that's interesting. Which one, personal preference, like which one do you prefer more?
I mean, it's always about urgency and scarcity, right? I think so like don't miss out. It was always like a pretty solid one. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, as I would say to any email person, what is the objective of your email? Maybe that's something you can bake into your prompt as well.
And in terms of AI chatbots, which one have you found that you like better? Is it kind of 50-50? You like both?
I'll try different ones, but if it's for looking for stuff on the internet, I use Perplexity because it does that really nice thing where it like points you to the source directly. I mean, one of the well, I can actually demo this now if we've got time. But one of the things that I think is really interesting with Perplexity is that you can use this prompt that I've got here and ask it to curate learning resources for you. And if anybody has been in a managing role, or if anyone's like new to a job and you have to like pick up skills pretty quickly, I think this could be a really good place to start. So it's a pretty long prompt, but essentially at the company that I used to work at, Filtered, where we wrote a lot of thought leadership about learning curation, we actually had this resource on like best practices to curate learning resources. So I've adapted that as part of this prompt. And so I'm going to like put this in the skill that I want to learn here. And let's just say it's like copywriting. And it'll do this really cool thing where it'll just like give you like all of the resources and why, the rationale for why it's picked those resources. And that can be something that you can give to like a junior person to help them get to grips with a skill pretty quickly as a foundation point.
This is insane.
It's cool, isn't it? I love this. Because like, marketing, I mean, just to context for myself, when I was first learning marketing and I graduated with a 3-year diploma in mass communications, like at that time there was no iPhone, like smartphones hadn't been invented yet. So I've had to like learn on the job like the whole time. And so I think this is hugely exciting as a way to kind of point people to like really good learning resources just very quickly.
And I saw part of the prompt that said to point to free resources. So these are all free learning.
Yeah, these are all free resources. Yeah. So yeah, Perplexity is very cool for this.
Yeah, I love Perplexity, but this is a really cool use case. I would have never even thought of this because, one of the things that you mentioned that was so important when you're thinking about using AI, and let's just say in the context for like email marketing, there's things that you need to know. You need to have foundations of copywriting, of persuasion, of sales writing, of marketing. There's so many different types of skills, that you kind of need to have. So this is amazing because you can definitely curate something to help you cut the learning curve for that.
Absolutely. I mean, even editing is a skill. That's like a skill that is separate to writing, which is crazy because you have to use both in copywriting.
This is so cool. Do you have any tips, or I don't know if this is like a prompt for either of the 3 chatbots, any tips on how to add a little bit more persuasion or persuasive copy into your emails?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a pretty famous book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. And he talks about in that book the rules of persuasion. And so what you could do is you could grab those rules and finesse your prompts in that way. So, there's like social proof is one of the rules. So you could probably bake into your prompting like, this is some copy I've written. Can you, using this rule of persuasion, can you refine it or rephrase it? So I think this is where marketing expertise comes in to writing really excellent prompts, because like writing something basic gives you basic output. I mean, that's just the reality. So yeah, really investing your time in in reading excellent marketing classics like Influenced by Robert Cialdini and other books is really going to help with your prompting.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. So, and then, yeah, you pair persuasions, essentially the frameworks of persuasion plus your microcopy, and then you're going to have a very powerful email structured.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's even things like, I'm such a big fan of really understanding cognitive biases because, you know, that can really shape your writing. And so I think you could ask AI to check for poor writing or like where cognitive biases are being used as well to just really strengthen your writing as a whole. So yeah, I mean, things like having loads of jargon and stuff is something that I feel like a lot of marketing people kind of like struggle with sometimes. And, you know, asking AI to kind of like simplify things can be a really good way to just make sure that you're pitching at the right level with your marketing copy.
Yeah, that's true. And when you mentioned cognitive bias, you know, that kind of I guess I have one more question for you here. What do you
think? Of course, yeah.
What do you think about, there's a lot of chatter around the ethics of AI and how some of it can be, you know, biased information or some people fear like privacy stuff and stuff like that. Like, what is your outlook on all of that?
I mean, I would stay on top of that because I think those are really important conversations that are happening. I still feel we're still in the nascent stages of understanding this technology and what it can do and what are the ramifications as well. So for me personally, like I was alluding to earlier, like I have a pretty clear policy on how I would use AI, and I would recommend that everybody does too. I just try to use it responsibly, obviously. So, you know, one of my policies is that I would never generate AI art and then call it my own. Like I would be very transparent whenever I'm using AI art, you know, that kind of thing. And I would never like sell it as my own because it's AI generated art, you know, that kind of thing as well. So I don't know. I would say to people, like, keep on top of like the conversations that are happening around ethics and AI. Be very clear on what you want out of AI as well, and you know what your boundaries are, because I think again that's perfectly fair. And yeah, I mean, in terms of like the biases in AI, that's true because the AI is being trained on information written by humans. Humans have biases. That's just how it goes. So I think what's important is, again, this comes down to taste, your expertise, your knowledge. Like, educate yourself on what those biases are and adjust accordingly. You know, like ultimately the onus is on you to responsibly create content that is free of bias, you know?
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And I like that, having a policy in place and kind of like your own rule of conduct. That brings you to like one of the last questions I have for you is, when you think about it from like a business level or like a team's level, what do you think are some best practices that people should keep in mind about how to onboard AI into their actual business or their team or their workflow?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think getting everyone on the same page with regards to what it is, what its limitations are, what is okay to use it for and not use it for. All of that stuff, I think, should be a really important part of any onboarding, especially if it's new to the team at large. Maybe individuals are already using it, but I think, again, like having a code of conduct when it comes to using AI is pretty important. And like, I would say that you would have the same kind of training when it comes to people using like managing social media, for example, right? It's not too different, because you want people to be responsible when they're creating content for social media, and you would obviously have like your message house and brand guidelines and all that stuff. I don't think it's that different from when it comes to using AI as a tool. There should be a certain house style, let's say, when it comes to using AI. So having that upfront, and then over time, because obviously the technology is going to change, your team's going to change, your business goals and desires are probably going to change as well. So having like regular check-ins on like, hey, how are, how are we using AI? And maybe involving that as part of like, how are we using our marketing tech stack? Because, sometimes you can go for like a full year subscription of not using a particular like thing in your tech stack. Sometimes I've seen that happen, and that can include AI. So, having a pretty solid and responsible marketing ops or like a company-wide ops policy is, I think, going to be key for people to be able to use AI efficiently and well.
That's true. Yeah, I like what you said, because if we go back to like the very, very beginning of the conversation, you mentioned when your team was starting to use OpenAI before OpenAI like blew up. Like your team kind of had like a show and tell, and you guys were sharing each other's like use cases and stuff like that, and you were like discovering it together.
Yeah, exactly. So like having sessions like that can be really fun and inspiring, and it'll also spark like really interesting ideas as well, because somebody might like have this cool new way of using AI that you'd never even imagine. I think it's even better if you can have a company-wide initiative like that. So not just people in marketing, because people in tech are going to view it a different way. People in sales are going to view it a different way. So having that real diversity of people using the same tool can really spark some interesting creative solutions.
Absolutely. So kind of just to recap, if you were to use AI in email marketing, for example, if we just kind of recap, the best key pointers. The first one was like auditing your time, right? This is very, very important. Seeing where you're like spending your activities and all that, and then figuring out how to, delegate that to AI. I love the part where you said it was, using it as your copilot. It still should be your taste, your voice, all of that. But most importantly, you kind of have to have your fundamentals in place. Then you showed us a prompt on Perplexity to, literally like accelerate your learning even faster than ever before. That's insane. In regards to like email specifically, one of the things you mentioned was kind of going for like this plainish text, right? Don't like overdo it, don't overproduce it, and just go for like impactful copy, even if it breaks the rules. And then finally, the last couple of things you mentioned, it was like create your own policy, your own rules of how to use it. And then if you're a team, just kind of create like this code of conduct and get everyone on the same page and teach them limitations and stuff like that. I think, this is a really insightful, and it's also very much of that in its own, it's like an SOP. That is a process.
Yeah, I think, I want to really iterate as well. I think it's fair to feel scared and feel a reluctance in using AI. I see why. But at the same time, I think if you want to protect yourself and your career and future-proof, your place in the industry, I think it's a good idea to at least understand how AI works. And I think at the minimum, that I think is advice I would give anybody, not just marketers as well, because just ignoring it and just trying to like steadfastly not use it, I don't think is going to be helpful for you and your career. So you don't have to like use it in your workflow, but I think even just understanding how it works is going to be really important for people to at least start from.
Yeah, this is really important. Generative AI is not going anywhere. So no, thank you for bringing that up. Naj, is there anything else that I might have forgotten that you would like to share?
No, well, I'd love to talk about Me. Sorry, I really struggle with talking about myself, so I have to make a joke of it. So yeah, I would say is that I would welcome anybody watching us to start a conversation with me about how you're using AI and how you're using it to augment your processes. Because I love talking to different people. Everyone has a different use for AI, which I think is the most special thing about the technology. Like, yeah, there's no single person that is using it in exactly the same way, and I'm writing, well, I write from time to time about like my experiments with AI. So like the learning one as well on my blog. So do look out for that on my website and LinkedIn. But overall, I think what I would say to people is like, hey, I think I actually had a presentation at Litmus Live where I dressed up as the devil, or I put on devil horns. And the main conceit was I was the devil's advocate for people being like, why should I pay for a marketer when I can get AI to do it? And I was like exploring the topic. But I think in a nutshell, what I would say to people is lean into being uniquely you. That's how you ensure that you are not being replaced. Because being uniquely you can't be replaced. And so that means like having your own voice, having your own taste, having your expertise and shouting about it. So that's what I would say ultimately is the most important thing on top of like the generative AI stuff.
Wow, this is so true. You have to be yourself.
You have to be yourself.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like it's really all relationships and people. What I love about that, especially with like content creation, it's like this is how people resonate to you, and you can attract more people that support you for who you are.
Yeah, I mean, we don't buy from businesses. We buy from personalities. We buy from, like other people who say, hey, this thing is pretty good. So ultimately, I think human relationships are still really important in marketing, probably more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Wow, this is really helpful. You mentioned you have a blog and a website. Where can people find that?
So it's just najmahsalam.com. There's all sorts of bits and pieces on there, all sorts of resources I'm sharing all the time. I'm chronically on LinkedIn as well, so do hit me up on LinkedIn too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing all of your insights and expertise. And for everybody else, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the AI Marketing Show.